What's up YouTube and welcome to a HiPaint tutorial. Now my channel, if you're new here, is actually dedicated to creating art tutorials for users whether or not you're on Android or iOS. There's a lot of apps that are available on both and I create tutorials for them, like using HiPaint or Infinite Painter, just to name a couple. Now if you're watching this as a HiPaint user for the first time and this is your first tutorial, it's really easy to follow along with, so trust the process from start to finish. You will be able to create this simple minimalistic landscape. Now if you want to go ahead and follow along with the exact same colors, I've actually gone ahead and provided multiple options in the description down below. You can grab the hex code for the 5 colors that are available, you can download the actual palette that I've created, or you can save the image and import it in and color pick from there. It's totally up to you what you want to do. And in the tutorial I actually use the palette file, so you're going to want to go ahead and download that if you want to your files and then share it to HiPaint and it will import it into your palettes. But that's why I've got multiple options in case you want to do that. So I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. Make sure to tag me in your finished creations over on Instagram when you're done. There's a link to all my socials in the description down below. And if you want to support the channel and all the work that I do here, you can now become a member of the channel. Get a loyalty badge beside your name, as well as early access to tutorials and much more. So hit the link in the description down below and come and show your support. And with all that said, let's get started. So once you open up HiPaint, the first thing we're going to want to go ahead and do is hit the plus down here, and we're going to want to create a new painting. Now there is some different options here, but I always go to the option of custom, and I'll set the width to 2000 and the height to 2000 as well. And you can see how many layers you're also going to have based on your device as well. So if we hit OK, we then go through to our canvas. Now the first thing we're going to do is just set a temporary background color. Now as I mentioned potentially in the intro as well, there is the actual color file for today's tutorial. And we're going to go ahead and grab the 5th color here on that row of colors. Now what you can then go ahead and do is go to your fill tool, and we can just tap in the middle of the screen just to fill that in. If we then go ahead and tap on our fill tool when we're done, we can now start to build up the layers from front to back. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to go back to our colors. We're going to grab the first color in the palette, the darkest tone. We're going to go ahead and go to our brush. We're going to go to ink and the ballpoint pen. I've got it maxed out on size and opacity on the left hand side there. And one thing to check, if you go up to your 3 dots in the top right and we go to sketch settings, please triple check my settings there against your own, just in case things differ slightly in terms of what we're working with. So feel free to pause at each one of these options here just to triple check. If something doesn't quite work for you, take a look at my settings here. Now we need to make sure if we go to our layers, we then create a new layer. We make sure then that when we're drawing, we're on the new layer. And if we start over here, we can go ahead and create a bit of a curve leaning down. And if you hold your pen down, you can get these 3 points. And I can drag each point into exactly the right sort of curve and position that I want it to sit in. And I can create exactly the right shape. So use the points here just to create a bit of a dip down into this bottom right hand side of our canvas. And then when you're done, we can go ahead and hit the tick here just on the right hand side of the far end of the line. If we go to our fill tool, we tap in this area here to fill it in. And then when you're done, tap on the fill tool. We'll then go to our layers. We'll create a new layer. And if you hold down on a layer, you can select it and drag it underneath any layer you want. We're going to put it underneath the last hill that we created. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab the 2nd color in the palette. And we're going to repeat. So we're going to go ahead and grab the 2nd color there. And we'll create another sort of banked hill over here on the right hand side, a little bit higher. I've gone all the way off to the left hand side here, and then I've just created a lovely big bank on the right hand side. Again, I can adjust the points if I want. I'm pretty happy with it sort of first time really, but let's just see what else we can maybe do. And just make sure you drag this point off the end here, just so that you can use the fill tool in a minute. So I'm just adjusting this slightly, and that looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and leave that there. I'll hit the tick when we're done. I'll go to my fill tool and I'll tap and drag in this space here. We're then going to go ahead, and if I go up to my 3 dots, so far I've been using correction here, and my correction was set to 40%. Now what that does is that gets rid of a lot of the natural tremors in your hand, and it nicely sort of smooths out those lines. But I want a little bit more tremor in there now, so I'm going to bring that down to around about sort of 10 to 15%. We're then going to go ahead, and I can simply go ahead and hit the cross now. I can go to my layers. I can tap on the orange layer and create a new layer so it sits in the right position. If we go to our colors and we grab the 3rd color here in the palette, we're going to keep the same brush. We're just going to introduce a mountain range. It's going to roughly sort of sit just from the sort of halfway point here, and you can create lots of lumps and bumps in here. lovely mountain range. Make sure you create some variety, but in the middle, try and sort of create like a nice focal point and let that just sort of run off to the end. And as long as you go side to side, you should then be able to grab your fill tool and tap and drag in there to fill that in. Mine is slightly off-centered, so what we can do is we can grab this icon here, the transform tool. I can move that across slightly to the left to try and position that in the middle a bit more. And then if I go ahead and tap on the transform when I'm done, if I just finish off that line again, I can go back to my fill tool and I can tap in that space there. Now, if we go ahead and tap on our fill tool when we're done with it, we go to our layers again, we tap on the orange layer, we create a new layer. And if we go to our colors, we go ahead and grab the fourth color on that top row. We can then go ahead and repeat and create a second mountain range. So this one had like a dip down here and a dip down here. This next one's almost going to sort of raise in the middle and come down on either side. So I'm going to start off just behind here now. Create a lovely varying mountain range here in the distance. Create some additional bumps and lumps if you want to, but I'm ultimately just going to let that sort of run off like so. And then I can go again with my fill tool, tap in there, triple check you're happy with it, which I am. And then we can go ahead and tap on our fill tool when we're done. Now, we've done that. What we can then do is you can take a look at all your layers and just maybe take a look and maybe see if you want to maybe move that layer down slightly, maybe even the one in the back as well. Maybe you want to move that one down just a little bit as well. So just tinker with them should you need to. But once we've done that, we can then introduce the gradient that goes in the background. So what we'll do is we'll go to our layers. Where we've got this orange layer here, let's just create a new layer for a minute. We're going to go ahead and go to the plus tool up here, and we're going to use the gradient tool. Now the gradient tool by default will be set to linear, and you'll have 2 points on either end of your line. What you can do is you can drag those points. So we're going to put that at the very top, and we're going to drag this one here by grabbing the end and putting it just behind our mountain range there. Now what we want to do is we want to tap on this little tile here. So we don't want to tap on it necessarily with the pen. If you've got one, just tap on it with your finger and you'll get the color picker. If you go to this tab here, you'll be able to find the palette that I've provided. So the color you want to grab is this orange. What we then want to do is create 2 more points on this line. So what you can do is you can tap sort of here, add a new point. You can tap here and add a new point, and each point is a different color. So this color here, just above the orange, you want to make sure it is set to the 4th color. You then want to tap on the point above it and set it then to the 2nd color in the palette. And then you can tap on this top one up here, again, potentially with your finger, and grab the 1st color in the palette. So you end up with this beautiful gradient of colors. Now, potentially you might want to change this one here to the 3rd color. It's totally optional, but I'm going to leave it with the 3rd color, I think. And then you can drag this line now into position and sort of create a beautiful gradient in the sky. And we can drag that a little bit higher. You can bring each point a little bit sort of varying sort of distance between it and the previous color. But hopefully you should get a nice gradient in your sky. And once you're done, we can just go up to our layers and we can move away from it. So you've got this gradient. By the way, now you can get rid of this orange layer. And if you need to delete a layer, you can swipe it to the left and you can get rid of it. So if we go back to the layer, you can swipe it to the left and hit delete. Now, let's introduce our sky and our sun. So we're going to go ahead and just in front of our gradient, create a new layer. We're going to go to our colors. We're going to grab the 5th color, again, to the orange tone. What we're then going to do is we're going to go to the plus. We're going to go to our shape option. We're going to set the option to the circle. And you can go ahead and just drag out a circle. So you're going to have to sort of guesstimate what is a perfect circle. So something around about sort of there looks pretty good. And if you use this option here with the leaf, if you tap on it, it actually fills in the shape for you. And then we can grab our transform tool here and we can move that just in behind the peak of your mountain there. So something like this. And you may want to go ahead and scale it up in size, move it again, just so it sits right behind there. And when you're done, you can just tap on your cursor at the top. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and go back to the layer. We're going to tap on the layer and you'll get this option here. We're going to change the blend mode from normal. We're going to change it to the option of add, which immediately starts to blend it with the colors that it sees underneath, which is the gradient. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and go to this layer. If we actually swipe it to the left with our finger and we go to this blue icon, we can duplicate the layer. And we can use this eyeball here on the left just to turn it off, so we visually can't see it for a minute. So the one that you can see, which is this one here, if we go to our 3 dots, we go to the option here, the 2nd tab, we can go to Gaussian blur, And if we drag this slider across now, we can blur out our sun, creating a lovely big glow. So if we go to something, say around about let's go to around about 88% and hit the tick when we're done. If we then go back to our layer and we turn on the one above, we should now get a little bit of a glow behind it. Now, if you don't, that's perfectly fine. You could just go ahead and blur it out again, or this one that we made the blur on, you can grab your cursor, you can go ahead and just simply scale it up in size. So scale up the glow, put it behind your sun, a little something like this, and then tap on your cursor when you're done. And you may want to go ahead and blur the top one. It's totally up to you, but I'm going to leave that exactly as it is. Let's then go ahead and go down to this layer here with our gradient on and create another new layer. We're going to go to our colors. We'll go back to the disk option here and we'll just drag it up into the top left to select white. We're going to go back to the three dots and go ahead and go to this icon here, the gear, and change the correction here. I'm going to move it back up to around about 40%. We're going to make sure our brush is still set to the ballpoint pen, which it is. And we're going to start down here. We're just going to create some wicked wobbly lines down here. They don't have to marry up necessarily to the one right above it. So let me just change my color back to white because it just changed. I can go ahead and sort of create some wiggly lines here for cloud-like lines. And then you grab your fill tool, and as long as you go edge to edge, which I actually haven't down here, I can see there's a little bit of a gap. I can connect that and go back to my fill tool and tap into that space and add in that lovely bit of color. Now don't worry about the white for a minute, it will start to sort of make sense in a moment. So just trust the process. We're going to go ahead and just sort of wiggle our pen along the sky here on this occasion. Maybe I'll come back on myself a few times. In fact, let's do another type of style. Let's maybe do something like that. Let's go ahead and then grab our fill tool and fill in that gap. Let's go again back to our brush. And we just got to keep going until we fill in our sky. So maybe we go ahead and we just sort of introduce like a bit of a shape like this that only comes in from one side. Grab our fill tool and pop it in there. We can then do the same thing by going back to our brush. Maybe we can go ahead and sort of create like a wiggly line that sort of makes its way through there nice and easy. You don't want to sort of interact necessarily too much with any other of the lines. We can grab our fill tool again and tap in that space. And then you can take a look, and do you want to introduce anything else? So you can go back to your brush again. Can we introduce like a little sort of wiggly shape in here maybe? And you don't have to do it absolutely everywhere, but maybe like a few in certain areas might look quite nice. Little small one in there too. We'll make sure we fill that while we're here. And going back to our brush, can we go ahead and just do one more maybe in this sort of space here? So it's just a little ellipse shape in there now. Grab our fill tool, fill that in, and that looks pretty good. I think we'll leave it like that. Now what you need to do is then go back to your layer, tap on it and go to the option here of its blend mode and change it to the option of overlay. That starts to bring in a lot of the colors in behind. And if we bring that opacity right down, if you want to bring it down to maybe sort of 20%, you will get some lovely color start to come through in your sky, and they'll just almost look like clouds. Now, if you want to, you can then go ahead and grab your eraser, this icon here, and if you tap on it and go to basic and soft airbrush, you might just be able to just lightly just sort of blend out a few of the top edges of the clouds to the top of the screen. So just going backwards and forwards a few times there just to kind of blend it out, get rid of a tiny bit, so it hopefully just blends up into the darkness. Then what we can do is we can go ahead and move forward. If we go to our layers and we go to the mountain, if we tap on this, so this is the back mountain, and we go ahead and go to this option here of lock transparent pixels, what that does is that means it's otherwise alpha locked, which is what it's otherwise known as, meaning now you can only paint on this layer on what is already on that layer. So if I now go to my color, if we go ahead and change it back in the palette to the orange tone, the fifth color in the palette, and we go back to our brush, we tap on the brush and we go to the option of, we'll go to basic and soft airbrush. Right here, just where the sun is, we're going to go left to right in a bit of a kind of curve, circular motion, go round in a circle, really blending that out. But right where the sun is, just introduce a little bit of orange. It's really, really subtle. And potentially, what you can also do is if you tap on this icon here in the bottom left, you get a color picker. You can grab the yellow from the sun and then very, very lightly, you want to be really, really light, just add in a little bit of extra color just on there, just to show that light just catching on the mountain top there. If we then go ahead and we take a look at the bottom area of the mountain, we can go to our colors. we'll grab the color that is going to need to be, let's grab the third color in the palette. And then just down here in these little gaps, just at the very bottom, you can maybe just darken them up just a tiny bit. It's really, really subtle, but just sort of go left to right, build the color up, and just darken up in the little gaps there. And then we can add a tiny bit of color onto here too. So if we go ahead and we go to our colors, we're going to want to go ahead and grab the color here for the orange again, the fifth color. If we go to our layer for that mountain, we tap on it. We go ahead and lock its transparent pixels as well. We can zoom in and we can just go ahead and just lightly, just towards the top edge, back and forth, just sort of lighten up the point there on the very top. Nothing too crazy, just really, really subtle. We can then move into our little trees. So what we'll then do is we'll go to our layers. We're going to go right to the top and create a new layer. We're going to go ahead and go to our color. We're going to grab this color here, the first color in the palette, which matches up to this hill. And something new that we've not used yet, if we go to the plus and we go to symmetry, if we choose this option down here, so this is the vertical symmetry, you'll get this line in the middle. Just lock it for a moment, so hit the lock icon here, that locks the line in play. If we zoom in, what we're going to do is we're just going to make sure we draw a line on that center point. Now we do need to change our brush. Let's go back, to the option of ink, and we're going to go to the ballpoint pen again. If we start in the middle on the line as best we can and we draw down, hold your pen down, of course, to get a nice straight line, but also the option to adjust it. We just want to create a tree, really simple tree like that. So what you can do is you can go ahead and just move that around if you want. You can maybe make it a little bit thinner. You could go ahead and rotate it if needs be, or even scoop it up at the top if you want, a little something like that. But once you're happy, just hit the tick icon and then just draw a line that links the two of them together. Then go to the option of fill and tap in that space. And then tap on your paint tool when you're done. And now you create a perfectly symmetrical tree. Then we can grab our cursor. We can move it over to the left-hand side. I'm going to leave it like that sort of scale. I'm going to leave that as the largest one. And then we can go to the layer. We can go ahead and swipe it to the left and duplicate it with the blue icon here. So you get another one in your layers. Grab your cursor. Use the normal option and just scale it down using the node in the top right corner. And just create yourself a really minimalistic forest. I can go ahead and I can grab the large one for a minute, for example, and just move that across to the left-hand side. And then I'll grab the other one as well and just move that across. And all I'm going to now do is simply keep swiping them to the left and duplicating them. Grabbing my cursor and scaling it down in size or making it larger or just moving it around. You want these trees at the front, of course, to be your largest. I'm going to put that there. Swipe it to the left and duplicate it. And we're probably going to go for around about sort of 5 in total. So I'm going to scale this one down, make it a bit smaller. Swipe that to the left and duplicate that too. And maybe I'll create a slightly larger one again just to sort of finish this off in this area. And taking a look at that, that looks really cool. Nice and minimalistic. Then, when you're done, tap on the top tree that you can see, tap on it and use the option of merge, which is going to merge it with the layer underneath it. Tap, merge, tap, merge, tap, merge. So you've got all 5 on one layer. We're then going to go ahead and tap on this layer. We're going to swipe it to the left and duplicate it. Now you'll end up with another one. If we then change our color to the color of the hill here at the back, which is the second color here, go to your fill tool, and if you've connected them, you should only need to tap once. But if you've got separate sort of spacing, just tap on each one that you need to. Tap on your fill tool when you're done. Go to your layer, drag it underneath, so it's the third layer down. Grab your cursor, go to the option here of flip horizontal. Then scale it down in size a tiny bit and move it over to the right hand side, and you can now create your second set of forest. Now we're kind of not cheating, but we're just saving ourselves some time because we're going to swipe this to the left and duplicate it, this collection of trees. Grab your cursor and then just move it down, scale it down in size, maybe overlap a few of them if you want to kind of remove the symmetry option. And then I'll tap on my cursor when I'm done. We've got this beautiful minimal forest. And when you're done, you can pinch with 2 fingers. You can use this option here in the bottom right, and you've got your first design in HiPaint. Now, when you want to come to share this, you can go ahead and just bring the menu back in. You can go up to the 3 dots in the top right. You can go to share, and you can export it as a JPEG or share it as a JPEG. If you want to save it to your files or photos, you use these options here. But if you want to share it to a particular app, you just want to use these ones here. So I hope you enjoyed this HiPaint tutorial. As always, make sure to tag me in your finished creations over on Instagram. You can find me and all my socials linked in the description down below. And this channel is completely dedicated to creating tutorials for users of both Android and iOS using apps that are available on both. So if you want to subscribe to the channel to be informed of other tutorials that I'm going to create, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below. And if you want to support the channel and all the work that I do here, you can now become a member of the channel. You get a loyalty badge beside your name in the comments, and you support the work that I create here, as well as get early access to a lot of my tutorials as well. So thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one.